Although a simple killer at first glance, and according to the majority of the community, Ghostface is actually extremely complex, and has one of the highest skill ceilings in the game, next to killers like Nurse, Billy, and Huntress. For an explanation of his power, lore, add-on descriptions, and teachable perks, read the wiki, which won't be discussed here for the sake of time. There's a lot of misconceptions about this killer that we'll need to address. People say that Ghostface might be a pub stomper, but he's weak against attentive players. This is actually incorrect, because with clever positioning and specific techs discussed later, you'll be able to sneak up on any player in most situations, while remaining entirely unseen. Also, people say that hit and run is the best way to play Ghostie because stalking takes too much time. Rather, learning to use your power optimally lets you mark it down just as often as hitting and running. Instead of going for quick early downs, make sure that the majority of survivors are stalked to 99% or 99 before downing anyone. Try not to hit anyone or down a stalked person right away before stalking anyone else. You should also try learning the survivor spawn points and patrol them early on to stalk anyone who spawned within, and then move on to other spawn locations. It can be difficult to learn where people spawn, and there are some guides that can help you with that and describe the concepts pretty well. Generally, survivors will spawn a certain distance away from you, behind or within main buildings, killer shack, or specific maze tiles. Usually, they won't spawn right out into the open. A lot of the maps have several fixed spawn points, with survivors randomly assorted among them. You could also play Survivor and run Bond and Object to understand how the spawning mechanism works. You'll save a lot of time by knowing exactly where to go to stalk players, and by leaving them mostly stalked, you'll trade some early game pressure for immense pressure down the line. Pay close attention to which way the gens are facing to know where to go to stalk them, and to decide which gens aren't worth defending. Defend gens which are easier to stalk, as well as gens in jungle gyms, rather than gens at the edge of the map facing the border. When nearly everyone is stalked, or a gen's about to pop, go ahead and attack a group of people on the gen. Getting multiple hits allows you to make good use of your stealth recovery time. If no one is grouped up, down a person at one of the defendable gens to ensure that it doesn't get done right away. With one person down and most people almost marked, you'll have massive pressure on the survivors and be in a really good place for the mid-game. Sometimes you'll be forced to down people when you haven't stalked anyone else, like when you see someone spawn on a totem or something. In this case, hook them right into the open and pay attention to rescuers. Then let them rescue the hooked person and 99 them both. Then stalk and down a third player. If you stalked multiple people, try and hook players behind cover or in corners so that you can set up for a snowball without them calling out your location. It helps to be skilled at tracking survivors from a distance, as it gives you an indication of their location without them noticing where you are. Don't use debris tiles for stealth when traversing the map unless you're sneaking up directly to a survivor. Use tall maze tiles instead. Debris loops are shorter and require you to crouch, wasting time and limiting your vision while making it kinda easy for people to see you. At the beginning of the match, start by monitoring the possible survivor spawn locations and paying attention to crows. The presence of crows usually clears the area of survivors, and it's time for you to move on. Crows takes 15 seconds to respawn, so a landing crow indicates a survivor within 60 meters if they're running, or about 30 if they're just walking. A trail of landing crows, or a pattern of crows landing in quick succession, tells you the speed and direction of a moving survivor. This sounds like a lot of effort, but trust me when I say that Ghostface becomes a lot more fun and effective when you're using the environment and your brain to hunt survivors, rather than randomly bumping into them. Do you sometimes accidentally mark survivors that you 99'd for later? Always monitor uncleared areas of the map by leaning from a corner and looking from outside of your stalk circle. This will allow you to see people while hidden and prevent you from unintentionally marking them. I mapped out this relatively accurate representation, so keeping people on the outside of the stalk circle will prevent you from actually marking them, and instead it will allow you to just monitor an area for players. If you're getting seen when stalking from a seemingly hidden area, the background behind you might be too bright to hide in. You don't need to play around it each time, but it's definitely something to keep in mind. It's much more significant than you'd think and leads to many Ghostface players being seen. Corn maps haunt the dreams of every Ghostface/Myers main, but stalking through corn is more manageable if you do it properly. Align yourself with the direction the rows are running and stalk from as far as you possibly can. If the corn is running perpendicular to the way you're facing, stalk from 3 to 4 rows away. You normally can't go any further, but come any closer and you'll be seen. Don't try to circle around someone in the corn until you find a good spot, because a lot of time gets wasted this way. I made a quick guide previously about corn stalking, so use that as a reference. Everyone knows leaning is the most efficient way of stalking. However, there's a right and wrong way to do it. When leaning, try to stalk survivors from the edge of your stalk circle rather than the middle. You'll be significantly more hidden even while standing up. Scooting a step backwards often yields even better results. This so-called lean tech can be used to counter many notorious survivor loops, such as the House of Pain on Haddonfield. As you can see, these are the different survivor and killer point of views when stalking at an angle versus stalking normally. Though it can be countered to a degree by looking at the spot from where he's stalking at an angle. There's a lot of tiles you can mind game with regular M1 killers, and you can build off of those strategies with your Night Shroud. However, unless running double recovery add-ons, do not go into stealth when chasing an injured survivor in a loop. That's because your recovery time is far too long to be wasted this way. If you're gonna stealth here, then only stealth when you're chasing behind line of sight, such as at a jungle gym, instead of at loops where you're entirely visible, like debris tiles. Everyone knows that stalking is the way to go, as the hit and run playstyle seems to have died, fortunately. One thing you can do is mark a survivor to force the real target to act, such as attempt to hook rescue or start working on a specific gen you have easy access to, at which point you can stop them or wait a bit and then go after the person you marked originally once they have lowered their guard. The feeling of uncertainty among the survivor team is what makes this work, so make sure to not be seen during this process, as the team knowing your location could ruin things for you. This strat also works well against Swifts, but you need to be completely unseen by everyone for it to work properly. If they don't seem to fall for the bait, it's important to adjust tactics and sneak up on someone else, like the person you marked, and then go defend the hook to punish the team for failing to rescue their friend. As the match progresses, your goal should be to coax the team into positioning in a certain pattern throughout the map. Specifically, a bait is ideal when right after hooking someone, at least 2 survivors are far away from you, and preferably close to each other, as this will let you make good use of your stealth. Hooking people close to others makes it difficult to stalk them and use your stealth power, and essentially turns you into a regular M1 killer. If you manage to hook someone far away from the others, who you've preferably 99'd at some point earlier, you can try and bait stalk in order to down a would-be rescuer and push the hooked person into the struggle phase. How do you control the locations of survivors around the map? If you hook someone near the corner of the map, both them and the rescuer will be around that side of the map, meaning they'll be optimally positioned if you were to down and hook someone else far away. To ensure that survivors will stay far away from you after a hook, don't spend too much time guarding open gens near the center of the map. Discordance is a great perk to use for strats like these, because you'll know exactly where 2 people will be and set up for a bait accordingly. You can incorporate bait stalks into advanced, intricate plays that can basically guarantee you a 4K against any team. Even if you don't end up baiting that match, you still need to force the survivors into placements around the map, such that your stealth will be of greater value. That's right, as long as you can make specific, clever decisions and execute them perfectly, you can almost always 4K any Swift, regardless of their skill level. and this is what separates good ghost faces from the absolute best. It involves manipulating survivors into certain zones of the map and finishing with the bait stock, which can result in someone on a hook skipping a hook phase, at which point you can potentially 99 them as soon as they get off the hook and finish them off easily later, which will make the rest of the match much easier. There's many different sequences of steps you can develop, utilizing different map-specific features to your advantage. Here's a very simple example. First, try and 99 as many people as you can before gens get significantly progressed. On good days, and with the help of perks such as Lethal Pursuer, I can get 3 to 4 people almost fully marked pretty quickly. And also, knowing spawn locations helps significantly. Next, down and hook someone near the edge of the map. It also helps if there's a nearby gen, so when they get rescued, Discordance will let you know if both survivors decide to work on that gen, and therefore whether or not to try and do a bait. Next, down and hook someone on the other side of the map, preferably someone you've already 99'd. If the original gen is still being worked on, mark the last survivor from an unseen position. If they do end up seeing you, chase them for a bit and break line of sight before leaving, or you could actually try downing them. The point is to pay attention to when someone from the first gen comes for the rescue, so you pay attention to Discordance, and then you can cut them off with a single stab. Initially hooking someone at the edge of the map gives you more time to intercept this would-be rescuer, as well as maintain your stealth a bit better. It's important to still keep tabs on the person you marked to make sure they don't catch on and go for the save. That's why it's better to perform the bait unseen, as it's harder to display your intentions, especially against a skilled Swift. Doing it perfectly will cause the hooked survivor to skip a phase, at which point you can let them get rescued and 99 them immediately for an easy down later, and then maybe go after the person you first hooked. It might seem unlikely that good players will stack on gens, but running perks like Ruin will put more pressure on them to get early gens done more quickly. If your plans end up falling through, you can construct a new, possibly more complex sequence to achieve a similar result. The example I gave you was a pretty basic one, but I'll leave it to you to figure something else out. I'm not entirely a pro at my execution, but not many things are more satisfying than the few times I got a convoluted plan to work flawlessly. Different map layouts require different strategies, so you should adapt to specific map features, such as basements, dead zones, wide open gens, and gens in tiles in the corner of the map, and use them to your advantage. Ghostface has very little chase power, so you need to be clever and resourceful with your stealthy plays. There's many map features you can use to your advantage. Wide open generators. Don't let these get done right away, and hook people near them so that multiple people are more likely to stack on them, and allowing you to get multiple stocks. Maze tiles. Traverse the map between these instead of walking out into the open. Gens here are dangerous for survivors and should be easy stocks for you. Basements. Doing a bait stock and intercepting the rescuer could allow you to get multiple basement hooks. Open hooks. Hook people here to let you 99 both them and the rescuer when they get unhooked for a later time. Corner hooks. Hook people here to set up for a bait without the hooked player calling out your location to their friends. You don't always have to do a bait here, but the point is to try to down someone relatively close to the hook without actually letting them get the save. I also made a perk tier list, and a bunch of the perks have a lot more depth than what they might appear to be. Play with your food is actually a pretty good perk on Ghostface, as you can down the people who aren't the obsession and then use the Night Shroud cooldown time to farm for stacks, if possible, and try to actually avoid downing the obsession. And instead, you can bait stock them occasionally to coax other people into more dangerous locations. You can treat Make Your Choice like a free bait stock. Like if you down someone when another survivor is exposed, they'll be less likely to come for the save, and then you can predict who will actually do the rescue, and then go for them instead. You don't always have to try to down the person who just did the rescue. You can leave them to go after other people who they cannot rescue without putting themselves in danger. Ruin is a lot more than just a simple slowdown. This perk allows you to leave people you've already stalked on gens. You might ask why you'd want to do that. So after stalking someone to 99% who's on a gen, you can take some time to go around and stalk other people on other gens before coming back to the first person and downing them before they get to complete their gen and watch it regress to 0. Lethal Pursuer can be used to try to stalk everyone early on, but even if you can't, you can use it to pay attention to see if they start running or not and determine whether or not they have something like Sprint Burst. It'll also give you a mental image on how to arrange the survivors throughout the map in the middle of the game, and help you plan for things like baits and stuff like that. Infectious Fright lets you clear an area after downing someone when you're not in stealth, so that you know that no one can immediately go for the save when you leave them, and it'll let you do some of the more advanced strats that I mentioned. And if you pair it with Knockout, you can sometimes leave the person slugged and then go after someone who might be in a more risky position, like they might be dead on hook or something. Discordance is probably his best tracking perk, and can be used for so much more than just knowing where multiple people are. For example, if you just hooked someone and see a discordance turn off, it might indicate that someone is coming for the hook save from that direction, allowing you to cut them off before they can get the rescue. Likewise, if Discordance isn't activated, it'll tell you that everyone is split up on different gens, and then you can choose who to down from there. You can also use Discordance to detect whether or not people have Spine Chill. If you stare at a Discordance gen for a few seconds and people get off, there's a good chance that they have the perk. You can also use it to some extent to counter Decisive. If someone who got recently unhooked gets on a gen with their rescuer, you can instantly down them and put them back on the hook, since their Decisive will be cancelled. The best add-on combo, in my opinion, is the Chewed Pen with the outdoor security camera. Information is crucial for Ghostface and is essential when snowballing. Remember, you're not meant to chase everyone you see right away, but instead, keep tabs on them for later, and then downing the right person at the right moment will lead to immense pressure on the survivor team. The camera can also take the place of Barbecue, another pretty good perk, essentially freeing up a perk slot. Double Recovery would be his second best combo, namely the Chewed Pen with the address book. It's pretty nice having double recovery, but a good Ghostface player will do well with just the Chewed Pen. You should go after groups of survivors and down one while going for regular hits on the other, giving your power time to recover and making double recovery unnecessary. It also lets you go into stealth when chasing survivors in loops, but you shouldn't spend a lot of time chasing to begin with. Some other decent add-ons include the stock speed add-ons, the perfume, and Ghostface Condom Tape, which people say isn't a really good add-on, but with this add-on you can actually just walk up to people and start stalking them instead of having to spend time searching for a stock spot beforehand. But make sure you're always running at least one recovery add-on. I usually run the brown recovery every match, as his base recovery time is far too long to do well against good players. Your cosmetics are also pretty important. I like to use the classic robe and the devil mask, as the dark robe and mask blend pretty well into the environment, especially on darker maps. And also there's a misconception that the red mask is very visible, but it actually appears really dark on most of the maps and makes you really hard to see. The silver mask and the regular base mask or the prestige one also work pretty well, but don't use the classic mask or the blighted skin because they are pretty easy to see from afar. Also, stay away from the default robe or the prestige one because the ribbons tend to give you away pretty often. The classic robe is probably one of his better skins, or the red one also works pretty well. Counterplaying a Ghostface depends on their type of playstyle. If they're more of a hit and run type Ghostface, you should try to take hits for other players as well as break them out as soon as they walk away from you. But if the Ghostface likes to stalk, then try to stay close to people who are close to Death Hook and take hits for them if you see the killer. The goal is to try to get him to spread hooks between the 4 survivors because there isn't enough time for him to hook everyone and still win the match if you're doing gens. Don't try to reveal him when he's leading because you won't see enough of him to be able to break him out of stealth. I made a list of stock points on every map that I've been updating since I made the first guide, so be sure to look at that if you want to know some good areas to stock from, and the link will be in the description. I also made a map tier list describing how well Ghostface can use specific map features to his advantage, and I'll probably cover most of them in my World Tour series, or at least the important ones, but if you want a specific map covered, be sure to let me know. As a 5k hour Ghostface main with fair comp experience, I think he can be pretty viable in a competitive match when used brilliantly with little mistakes given a fair rule set. The most impactful perks a comp ghostie player needs to play around are Decisive and Deliverance, as they can completely negate the killer's pressure. Use tracking perks and reasoning to determine who's doing the rescuing. Avoid hooking anyone you think has made a hook save. The advanced plays I mentioned are very useful even against a Swift, so be sure to try some of those. Also, focus on hooking only a few survivors at a time and don't spread hooks among all 4 players. This will take too much time and you'll end up with no kills as they'll pump gens very quickly. Be aware that these survivors will efficiently guard their vulnerable teammates, whether it's by taking a hit for them or being on the lookout when they do a gen, or giving them their medkit or other items. And it's your job to figure out how to play around these situations and striking when the opportunity arises. The Decisive Strike nerf opens a lot more room for cheeky baits and quicker killing. Hook a survivor near the gen, then mark someone else around the time they get unhooked. Discordants will tell you if they immediately touch the gen, at which point they'll lose their DS and are able to get marked down and hooked again. It also applies if they're healing someone, such as themselves, or doing a totem or something, although they're unlikely to put themselves in that much danger. The bait stock isn't always necessary against casual survivors, but might be so against highly cautious protective survivor groups. Because of the long recovery time, you might find it useful to sometimes break yourself out of stealth after marking someone to decrease that recovery time a bit. Only do this in situations where you know stealth won't be helpful, like short wall loops. You can practice stalking with a friend in a form of Ghostface 1v1s. Make them work on a gen and your job is to mark and down them without them seeing you at all before they finish the gen. You cannot chase them either. You have to be clever enough to sneak up right behind them and get a hit. It sounds impossible, but as you get more skilled with Ghostface, you'll learn to abuse large stalks and means to stay completely hidden. Don't waste your power recovery time. Go for regular M1 hits on nearby players or break pallets or gens, or even farm and play with your food stacks if you're running a perk. In public matches, pay attention to certain offerings survivors bring and act accordingly. Coins, pay attention to chests, especially the one in the basement, which can get you a game-changing basement hooks. Hatch offerings with the key. Stalk the guy with the key to 99 beforehand and camp the hatch, then down him first. If you kill him early on, pay attention to people who might try to retrieve the key. If someone healed shortly after you hooked someone, they might come for the rescue, so try to quietly catch them off guard. There's a unique mechanic where leaning to the right while standing will allow you to see more horizontally than when crouched, whereas leaning to the left will allow you to see more horizontally when you're crouched. You can use this in tandem with the lean tech to get some very hidden stocks. If you want to genuinely be a good Ghostface player, try to avoid stalking players at loops or doing the thing where you cheese the reveal by stalking someone and repeatedly crouching so they can't reveal you. It takes time and is usually a sign of a weaker player. Try to stalk players unseen. If you down someone and no one else is 99, you can farm stocks by hooking this player out in the open and 99ing them and their rescuer, and then stalking and downing a third person. If you want to 99 multiple people on your screen without marking any of them, You can use the edge of your stock box to help you trying to get the precise 99s on all these players. I'm not going to talk about grabs because I think they're pretty unreliable, or about reveal tricks because I think you should work on improving your overall stealthiness rather than just preventing yourself from getting revealed. Well, I hope you learned something. If you have any more questions, let me know. Good luck, and I'll see you in the next one.